Besides my announcement on 2nd September regarding my decision to stand as a candidate for the 2021 Sikyong, I have in the last 5 weeks spoken about 5 important topics that concerns us. The first was on how to resolve the Tibetan issue. Then we spoke about the roles and responsibilities of the Kashak. Then we spoke about how do we strengthen the Central Tibetan administration. Then we also spoke about how do we strengthen the local Tibetan communities. And last week we spoke about empowerment of youth and women. So today is the 6th week, 21st of November 2020, and today's topic is equally important. It's about the Tibetan language, Tibetan religion, and the education system as a whole. Now, when we talk about Tibetan culture, then we speak from the perspective of Tibetan identity, because that is what we are fighting for. And Tibetan culture lies at the very heart of our existence as a people, whether we will survive as a people or not, or it's struggle. So now we have to realize that the core of this culture are the values of Buddhism. And even today, whether you are Tibetan or non-Tibetan, if you have to have a complete understanding of Tibetan Buddhism, it's a prerequisite for you to understand Tibetan language. Now, over the last 60 years, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and religious heads of all traditions, whether it's Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, Gelu, or Penpa, all of them have managed to re-establish all major religious institutions that were in Tibet, in the exiled communities. Not only that, they have also established Buddhist centers all across the world for anyone who has the zeal and the enthusiasm to learn Tibetan Buddhism. Now these monasteries that His Holiness and the religious leaders set up in exile, they are not only the existential pillars of our community, as I've mentioned earlier also, the bigger the institutions, they form the backbone of the survival of our communities. So they are not only our existential pillars. The monasteries have made remarkable contribution in the preservation and promotion of our religion, our culture, our language, and today they have become the core capital. If we talk in terms of business, they have become the core capital of our struggle, because preservation of Tibetan language, culture, and religion is also a part of the struggle. Now, Buddhist centers in different parts of the world, they have not only succeeded in spreading the message of peace and compassion that is enshrined in Buddhism beyond the realm of the Tibetan Buddhist world, but they have also taken pioneering role in introducing Tibet and its culture to the non-Tibetans. So we have to be mindful of what every single organization has done in these different countries. Now, under ordinary circumstances, the Central Tibetan administration, even back in Tibet and even today here in exile, we don't interfere in the running of the monastic institutions. They have their own age-old, centuries-old institutionalized management of their system, which are self-sufficient in itself. So there is no need for the CTA to directly interfere in the running of the monasteries. But the main responsibility that concerns religion and culture is the Department of Religion and Culture. The main responsibility of the Department of Culture and the administration is to maintain relations with the 262 monasteries and nunneries in India, Nepal, and Bhutan. The department also organizes public prayers for the long life of His Holiness and other heads of religious traditions, and also praying for the successful endeavors of all these great minds. Then the department also takes care of the old, infirm, and vulnerable monk and nun communities. Over the years, with the leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the heads of the religious tradition, the successive heads of the religious traditions, we have learned to respect each other while practicing our own unique traditions. So this harmonious relationship between the different traditions in Tibet was achieved mainly by the leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the cooperation of the religious heads of different traditions. That also we have to be mindful. Now, over the course of my career, more than 2 decades of my career, I had the opportunity to learn a lot about the contributions made by monasteries and lamas and its affiliates all around the world. Now, I'm convinced that there are still many ways we can optimize their potential. And as a Tibetan, we have to understand and be ever more indebted to the benevolence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the leaders of the religious traditions for their farsightedness, for their leadership. Moving forward, we should not only understand the depth of their futuristic guidance, but also see how we should implement in our day-to-day life. Now, how do we move forward? That is the question. That is the major question that concerns us. Now, if you were to elect me as Sikyong, my kasha will first, we will maintain relationships with and render services to all the monasteries of all denominations, equitably based on the reality of the situation. That is my first commitment. And the second is, I will always consider it our good fortune to be part of or to be able to serve the private office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama in all its projects and programs, in whatever capacity, wherever necessary, to fulfill the visions of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That is my second commitment. The third is, my Kashak will assist any such program undertaken by the monasteries that enhance healthy relations between different faiths, different traditions, whether it's discourse or whether it's debates or whether it's a communion, in whatever form, we will assist in those programs within the different Buddhist traditions in the community, as well as Buddhists in other countries which follow different traditions or which follow the same traditions. And then the larger picture is the harmonious relationship between different religions, which is the second commitment of His Holiness Dalai Lama. So we have to work in any way possible to fulfill these visions of His Holiness. That is my third commitment. And the fourth commitment is, much of the Buddhist centers around the world are affiliated to the parent monastery in India, Nepal or Bhutan. Now, we will facilitate, what we can do as CTA is to facilitate better relations and coordination amongst Buddhist centers in different regions, whether it's North America or Europe or any other places where we have a number of Buddhist centers all around the world. We have to work towards turning these Buddhist centers into centers of learning and teaching Buddhism. not just to meet for certain occasions or just to organize meditation of that sort. It has to be centers of learning Buddhism. So we'll stress on that to the Buddhist centers. And these are, of course, over and above what the Department of Religion and Culture does already. And for the monks and nuns who spent their whole life studying the Buddhist philosophy, it is our job to make sure that they are medically taken care of. So we will provide whatever additional facilities necessary for the monk and the nun community to live in a healthy atmosphere. So the first step would be to provide all necessary facilities for preventive medical care. So instead of monks and nuns having to go to hospitals, we'll provide them at their doorstep. And the last part is we'll provide every possible assistance as necessary to individuals and institutions or organizations that are involved in the preservation of Tibetan art and culture, be that Lama Tsokpa or anybody who is engaged in Tibetan arts and crafts. We will plan various programs to promote this, and if anybody needs any assistance in their endeavor, we will render that. So this much is a very brief account of what we intend to do, what we plan to do, what we are committed to do. If you entrust me with the responsibility in terms of preserving our culture. I have not gone into the details of what the monks should do, because there have been many advisories and many guidance from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, particularly in specializing in subjects in the monastic scholarship. So these are left to the monasteries for themselves, because we don't interfere in that, but we will from time to time exhort the monastic community to abide and to promote His Holiness' vision in this field. The second part of today's topic is education. In the last 60 years, particularly soon after coming into exile, His Holiness has said many times that Pandit Nehru, the then Prime Minister of India, advised him to provide good education to the Tibetans. This was very much in the mind of His Holiness. So under the noble leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and with the help of the host nations like India, including Nepal and Bhutan, so to some extent, host nations, individuals, many individuals have also contributed for the education of the Tibetan children, and organizations. We have emerged as a model refugee community in providing education to our youth that laid the foundation for a successful community. The reason why we are successful today is because of His Holiness farsighted to start educational institutions early on. Now our job is to build on that success story. Our job is to carry this forward by preparing for the new challenges posed by the ongoing social and demographic dynamics and find ways and means to mitigate to these obstacles. Now, how do we do that? First, we need this understanding that the main purpose of education is to enable the person to lead a meaningful life. Meaningful life. It's not enough just to learn to read and write. People who know this may create more problem if you do not develop a mind to decide what is right from wrong. So our job is to provide an education that enables the young children to develop a mind capable of distinguishing right from wrong. Then once they are able to do that, then they will be contributing members of the community. Then they can render helping hands to other community members and build the community from inside. And the second thing is that to achieve that, the education policy proposed by Professor Samdong Rinpoche's Kashak not only meets the requirement of our community in preserving our identity, but it's also our bounden duty. If you were to entrust me with the role of with the responsibility of the Sikyong, then it is our responsibility, it's our bounden responsibility and duty to implement the law or the policy that is laid down by the Tibetan parliament in exile. So that is how democracy functions. Now, as soon as we assume office, we will review the progress made by the Independent Education Board, where it is now, what they have done so far, and whether we need to make changes to the responsibilities. And then we will also look at the situation of the schools in detail, and the teachers, the textbooks, the teaching aids and reference materials, based on which we will come out with concrete proposals to carry this education policy forward. That will help us in keeping our identity intact. The third point is, when it comes to meeting the existing challenges of the school, I am very clear in my mind that it is not a matter of who runs the schools, because that relates with very few people. But the main issue is to see how best we can be of service to the student community, what we can offer them in the best possible way. That should be the focus of how we should move forward. Now, as a part of this, it will be our endeavor to strengthen the primary school and every settlement for the child to be with their parents. The education policy also speaks about this. Western psychologists also say that a child from between the age of 3 to 5, it's very important in their life to develop characteristics of who they are. So up to primary level, we have to make sure that every settlement has a school, irrespective of the numbers. We may have to make adjustments, but that has to be the basic policy of small children being able to live with their parents. And another point, in short term, we will conduct a full-fledged survey of the number of children, including pregnancies, including parents, mothers who have child in their womb, so as we get a full understanding of what the situation was, what are the situation now, and what will be the situation in the next 5-10 years to come. Now, based on those statistics, we will have a long-term plan as to where our schools, the senior schools, should be located in northeast, north, middle, south. So all those statistics has to be taken into consideration when we look at futuristically as to how we should move forward in terms of where our schools should be located. Then I also believe that in the long-term interests of the community, it is good to have one good school in one settlement instead of many. One good school with very competent staff and all the facilities that is required for a good school. So we'll provide all these facilities, and that is the only way forward. So if that is the only way forward, why don't we start from now? So we have to do it now. Now for that, we will develop a plan whereby we make the optimum use of the available resources, whether it's human resources or financial resources. What we are getting from the Indian government, from the Human Resource Development, now it's the Education Ministry to support our schools, and then also all the individual and organizational fundings that the Tibetan children's villages receive. So we have to optimize our available resources, and the least of the consideration should be who runs it. We will not argue or we will not fight over who will run these schools. So whoever can run it the best can be resolved. So for that, all the stakeholders, whether it's the Sambota that is under the Department of Education, or the Tibetan Children's Villages, or the Homes Foundation in Mussoorie, or Tindubling the Tibetan School, or the schools in Nepal run by the Snowline Foundation. So all these stakeholders, we will take their views, their concerns into consideration, and they themselves will become part of the solution. With their cooperation, we will seek a solution to this new challenge. Now, it's very important. The next point is that this is the age of digitization. This is the digital age. So in this digital age, we have to make use of all modern tools to further human values. So we will leverage the functions of the libraries in the schools and outside as to how do we digitize this, how do we make it available for the children at a larger level, how do we optimize the use of libraries, how do we make schools part of bigger libraries in a digital way, because so many reference materials are available there. Then we also need to develop, we have to collaborate with experts on animation, on graphics, and create new cartoons for the young, very young children. Because I've noticed when I go to other countries, all these small kids are exposed to Western animation. So that is what is imprinted on their mind. And we are never short of stories. We have a lot of stories with good values. So we can create a lot of animation that will cater to the need of the small children, up to the primary level. So we have to work on that. We have to use all kinds of modern tools to reach that level. Otherwise, we'll be left behind. And for the older children, we have to make sure that they are also facilitated with using modern equipments and tools. So eventually, instead of carrying too many textbooks, we may need iPads that has all the textbooks in it and make notes and all of that. So we have to move with the times while keeping our values intact. Another point is that we will continue with the ongoing scholarship programs. There is no doubt about it, because this is one very important area. But there are certain cases, students who top merit, but does not have the means and resources to fund expensive courses, specialized courses. Now, we'll have to find a way whether we can fund that through education loan or any other new means, because the Tibetan community today is very robust, it's growing, and people have the tendency to help each other. So maybe even crowdfunding is also an important avenue of raising funds, particularly for the students who are very bright, they top the merit list, but cannot join specialized courses only because they don't have the necessary funding to do it. So we have to look at those issues also. In the higher institutes of learning, you have Sarnath, you have the Dalai Lama College in Bangalore, you have Sara. So in all these and the many more that might come up in the future, we will stress on the importance of starting courses that the Tibetans have competency in, apart from what they are already teaching, so that others can also come to the Tibetan Institute and study. what the Tibetans have to offer, particularly on Tibetan religion and culture. Then we should also realize that not all students are well disposed to higher education. The Indian government has also come up with a new education policy that will be implemented from next year. And we are also aware of many different educational systems all around the world, and that seems to be close to what the Swiss model is all about. So when all the children are not well disposed to higher education, what we should do is we should identify students who have particular interests in particular vocations or particular art or particular craft or particular skill, so that we can provide them with that kind of education which will enable them to make a dignified living in their community. We can strengthen the vocational institutes that are prevailing now. If need be, we can start new vocational institutions. If we are not able to do that, then we can provide these opportunities in other institutes run by others. So we will explore all possibilities to provide all kind of vocational training for those who are not well disposed to higher education. Then, of course, teachers and staff members of schools play the most important responsibility, fulfill the most important responsibility of nurturing our future generation, the seeds of our future. Their needs and requirements must also be fulfilled. It must also be cared for, but it should be commensurate with the resources that we have. So for those, at least what we can do is for those staff who have no land holding in any of the Tibetan settlements, at least we can offer them space to build their retirement homes. That is the least we can do for people who have spent their whole life in nurturing our younger generation, new generation. Then, in my many years of service, I have interacted with many young people. I noticed that many young people are quite ill-informed. They don't have enough knowledge of our own situation. The reason why we are here, because of Chinese occupation. So it's very important. We have to make the younger generations of Tibetans to be responsible in future, then it's very imperative that they understand our own organizational structure, our own situation inside Tibet, what is going on. So all these, the younger generation need to know. And I can see a big lack or a gap in that. So that is something that we need to fill. So we'll provide with all kids tools for them to understand. We will prepare visual media. There will be opportunities for them to come to Dharamsala and interact with us directly. So there will be many ways, workshops, discussions, and things like that, where they can be educated on the reality of our situation and then become responsible members of the community. I am also a strong believer, not just in classroom education, but also educational tours. Once the children are exposed to different ways of living, whether it's to do with organic farming or specialized farming, agriculture science, or whether it's to do with the office work, or whether it's to do with the factory work, we can build connection with the companies and make sure that students are taken on educational tours, which I feel is more educational than just classroom studies. That is something that we will encourage the schools to undertake. Then the last and the most important point is that His Holiness introduced sea learning. So sea learning, of course, there has been many new initiatives in social and emotional learning, but His Holiness added the ethical learning. So social, emotional, and ethical learning, not just social and emotional. Okay, so this far-sighted initiative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, teaching secular ethics in school, is not based on any particular religion. but aimed at creating a new generation of youth for a peaceful world. So it'll be our endeavor, if you entrust me with the responsibilities, to set our schools as an example for the implementation of sea learning in as many schools as possible, to spread out globally. For if we have to convince somebody else to adopt this system of education, then we need to show by ourselves that we are following it. But that does not, some people misinterpret that by thinking that, oh, if you teach sea learning, secular ethics, then we don't need to study Buddhism. No, as Buddhists, we study Buddhism, that is our own tradition, but also we learn to respect other religions. So that is where sea learning will play a very, very important role, and that will be, from my perspective, that will be the biggest gift from His Holiness to the humanity. Now, with the right policy in place, when all of us, the education department, the school managements, the teachers, the parents and students cooperate, we will definitely be able to scale greater heights and in leading the younger generation in the right direction. Because all we can do and we have to do is provide the children with the direction, with the right direction. Then children by themselves, with their own intelligence, will channelize energies in that direction. So it's also our job to make the youth understand that they are a significant pillar in the structure of our community. That you have to understand as youths. We have to make everyone else also understand that you are one of the most important pillars of our community. So while upholding the principle of equitable treatment of all, irrespective of size or numbers or locations, through cooperative effort, in the spirit of moving forward, not backward, in the spirit of moving forward, we can achieve all our objectives. I'm very confident about this. We can do it. And I ask of you to cooperate, and we can make this happen. Let us do it. Thank you.